my name is Tony. Now, unless you're an avid Sherlock Holmes fan, here's something you may not know. In the early 1960s, the estate of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle set up a film company called Sir Nigel Films. It was intended to financially exploit Doyle's literary works and characters in film and TV. The estate felt it was being gypped out of revenue by various media outlets and had issues with the quality of some of the output. So here they came to right wrongs and rake in the readies. The foot is a game, Watson. Best laid plans and all that. The company produced two films, the original Sherlock Holmes story, A Study in Terror, in 1965, and The Adventures of Gerard in 1970. The latter was directed by Jerzy Skolimowski, who denounced it as being his worst film. How promising is that? It was based on Conan Doyle's Brigadier Gerard stories, about the exploits of a hussar officer in the French army during the Napoleonic Wars. What resulted was a thoroughly dire British-Italian-Swiss co-produced so-called comedy adventure farrago that was an utter disaster. Fucking tripe. And that was it for Sir Nigel Films. The painfully brief Conan Doyle strip mining party was over. It did leave behind something of a unique curio in A Study in Terror, and consequently something that inspired two Sherlock Holmes future projects, both materializing in 1978. We'll get to those in due course. First though, American producer Herman Cohen was interested in developing a Sherlock Holmes picture, and arranged financing for it through Columbia. Michael Klinger and Tony Tygon Tenser came on board to handle the UK end. TV show and exploitation movie screenwriters Derek and Donald Ford came up with an original story involving Holmes and Jack the Ripper. They fashioned it into a script which Cohen didn't like, so he brought in Harry Craig to rewrite it. Craig would go on to pen screenplays for big productions like Anzio, Waterloo, Charge of the Light Brigade and Barry Lyndon, not to mention that atrocious Adventures of Gerard. His work on A Study in Terror went uncredited. What we've got up on the screen is this. Jack the Lad is striping sex workers in Whitechapel. Although the frenzied butchery is a right royal carve-up, there are distinct signs in the slashing of some attention to medical detail. Sherlock Holmes, John Neville, and Dr. Watson, Donald Houston, take delivery of an unsolicited case of surgeon's instruments through the post. The case hails from a pawn shop and has a scalpel missing. There is an aristocratic family crest in the box, and the delivery was postmarked, indicating dispatch from Whitechapel. Someone, Holmes rightly deduces, is trying to engage his interest in the murders. Holmes traces the crest to the aristocratic Osborne family, headed by the patriarchal Duke of Shires, Barry Jones. The Duke identifies the case of instruments as belonging to his estranged eldest son, Michael, who aspired to be a doctor. Michael disappeared to France to study medicine. He is metaphorically dead to the Duke after bringing shame on the family by choosing a medical career over his birthright. Dismissed and told to leave on the way out, Holmes and Watson run into the Duke's younger son, Edward, Lord Carfax, John Fraser, who confirms the case was a gift he gave to his brother. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister, Cecil Parker, instructs Sherlock's brother, Mycroft, Robert Morley, to engage the detective services in stopping the Ripper. Holmes, however, is already on the case, having offered to assist Scotland Yard peeler Inspector Lestrade, Frank Finlay, in any way he can. The pawnbroker, Charles Rainier, informs Holmes that he received the surgical instruments from a prostitute called Angela Osborne, who gave her address as a soup kitchen and hostel for the destitute run by Dr. Murray, Anthony Quayle. Murray, also the police pathologist, runs the hostel with his niece Sally, Judy Dench. The operation is bankrolled and sustained by funding and support from none other than Edward, Lord Carfax. The missing Michael used to assist Murray in the physical care of the poor. Angela Osborne was the name of his prostitute wife. Murray denies any knowledge of where either Angela or Michael might be, and the thick plottings. To further convolute the convolutions, it transpires that violent thug and pimp Max Steiner, Peter Carston, an ex-associate of Angela's, blackmailed Lord Carfax, threatening to tell his father that Michael had married a lady of ill repute. Fearing the shock would put a further strain on the old man's ailing ticker, Carfax bought his silence, and Steiner now owns a Whitechapel pub pub and brothel on the proceeds. Who says crime doesn't pay? With Jack continuing to ply his grisly trade in the vicinity, the natives getting restless, sex workers dropping like flies, and a fair few suspects to choose from, Holmes must reason and strategize to identify and catch the perp before more hookers bite the cobbles. Around the time of release, the Batman TV show was a big pop cultural hit in both the US and UK. Look at this poster to get some idea of how the publicity and marketing arms of the studio thought to represent and sell the film. Sherlock Holmes, the first Cape Crusader. Holmes and Watson, the first dynamic duo. Pretty bloody stupid, right? Well, yes, it is blatant misrepresentation, but there are connections to be made, and I can see to some extent what prompted this approach by the PR jockeys. A Study in Terror strikes as a live-action comic book version of Sherlock Holmes. For a kick-off, the colour palette is right up in your face, garish and lurid, hyper-realised, taking its cues from the Hammer cinematography playbook, no doubt. Whether we're in fog-shrouded Whitechapel backstreets, palatial manor houses, a morgue, a soup kitchen, or 22 1B Baker Street, it's a vibrant retina scorcher, fabulously unreal and starkly nightmarish. One of the things I absolutely love about it, for me, Desmond Dickinson's lens work and colour scheme is a juiced-up treat of atmospheric Victorian Gothic splendour. In a street fight, Holmes and Watson are beset by three thuggish bruisers, and the very brisk and busy altercation may well have resulted in impromptu visualization of Batman-like biff bang pow comic book call-out effects in the minds of the marketing johnnies. All the performances abetted by the strident script and dialogue are equally up in your face. Loud, theatrical, over-earnest, and loaded with melodramatic bombast and overemphasis. Stagey and exaggerated, Amdram 101. All part of the fun, especially Anthony Quayle, who blusters and brimstones like it's going out of fashion as a sort of Victorian SJW. And Robert Morley, who as Mycroft loftily pontificates at his most plummy and pompous. Neville is a twinkly-eyed, energetic, faintly ironic Holmes. Houston is all protesting indignation as a comically straight-laced and quick-to-take offence Dr. Watson. They're a decent pairing. The support cast is top-rate, teeming with familiar faces, some of whom, Barbara Windsor and Judi Dench, look impossibly youthful. It excels in its handling of the violence and slaughter, drawing on the art of suggestion to make it appear gorier and more gruesome than it actually is. The impact of what you don't see is cleverly filtered through the reactions of the characters who are visibly shaken and traumatized by what they witness, the repulsively inhuman horror of it. It isn't sexually explicit by any means, but one standout sequence results in a fascinating psychoerotic set piece. Working girl Mary Jane Kelly, Adina Ronay, unknowingly invites the Ripper into her digs, sealing her fate. The build-up sees her posing seductively, speaking flirtatiously, moving enticingly and provocatively to invoke sexual desire in what she perceives as being just another average John. It's a tense, hypnotically edgy, anxiety-inducing moment, culminating with a murder briefly experienced from Jack's perspective. The most inventively structured scene in the film, closely followed by the climactic fire at Steiner's bar, in which the identity of the Ripper is revealed, and Holmes dukes it out, pardon the pun, with him in the Inferno. The practical fire effects are some of the very best seen in that decade. It ends with Jack getting incinerated on the collapsing four-poster bed of an ex-prostitute. Pity the subsequent payoff ruins it. I'll explain, but there will be spoilers, so you have been warned. Murray's physically and mentally impaired mortuary assistant is revealed to be Michael Osborne. A beating from Steiner resulted in his brain-damaged condition. Also, during the fracas, acid was thrown in the face of his prostitute wife Angela, Adrienne Corrie, who now lives in the apartment above Steiner's bar, her face hideously scarred. She and Steiner tell a different story, that the blackmail idea was actually down to Michael, that he pimped Angela for money and was a violent and depraved individual. They further insist he deliberately threw the acid into Angela's face. It was she who sent the surgical instrument case to Holmes to secure his involvement. Holmes and Watson return Michael to his father, the Duke, with Holmes sensitively and poignantly explaining,
"Your son is a pathetic imbecile."
Words every parent would surely cherish. Well, that's political correctness for you. The Duke softens, as you would following that heartwarming revelation, and agrees to take in and care for his damaged son. Holmes figures out the Ripper is Lord Carfax. Initially unable to identify or find Angela and exact revenge, he's decided to eviscerate all prostitutes on the off chance of striking lucky. Well, it's a plan, I suppose, and he is batshit crazy. He attempts to butcher Angela while she sleeps, but Holmes is lying in wait. In a thrilling confrontation in which the room catches fire, Carfax, Angela and Steiner all burn to death, whilst Holmes is trapped in the burning building. And with one bound, he was free. What? Cut to Baker Street with Holmes and Watson, with Holmes relating the story of the fire. How did you escape, Holmes? He won't say. Ah, well, that's just great, isn't it? Along with the decision to keep the identity of the Ripper secret, to spare the Osborne family, who have endured a long and proud history of interbreeding and congenital insanity, much like our own royal family. Yes, they've suffered enough, poor rich, privileged devils. What's a dead whore or two in comparison? What say you, Andy? I wouldn't go so far as to claim it ruins the entire film, but it's a dreadfully inadequate conclusion that certainly doesn't do it any favours. It deflates everything to a terminal flat note. The director, James Hill, had his biggest screen success the same year with Born Free. He went on to helm film adaptations of Black Beauty and The Bellstone Fox before settling into a career of TV work. He does show a certain flair for handsomely mounting the material and coordinating the action. The plot, though, is nowhere close to matching the meticulous contrivances and fiendish logic puzzles characteristic of Conan Doyle's writings. And this Sherlock Holmes is a more commercially user-friendly and sanitized version than usual, avoiding the underlying melancholia and less savoury aspects of the character. They would emerge later in Billy Wilder's The Private Life of Sherlock Holmes. The central idea of pitting Holmes against Jack the Ripper I always thought to be a darn good one, just it doesn't quite exploit its potential or live up to expectations. In 1978 though, it got a damn sight closer to the mark with Bob Clark's Murder by Decree, a far more creative and satisfying concoction. Here the Ripper is pitted against the inspired pairing of Christopher Plummer and James Mason as Holmes and Watson, with trivia fans Frank Finlay reprising the role of Lestrade and Anthony Quayle appearing as the police commissioner. On the downside, the same year as Murder by Decree, Michael Dibdin published his novel The Last Sherlock Holmes Story, a sorry travesty in which Holmes, it stupidly transpires, is a hopelessly insane maniac with multiple personality disorder and is not only, as it happens, Professor Moriarty, but also Jack the Ripper. Now, I'm no rabid Holmes purist, but I will draw the line at the manufacture of controversy for controversy's sake and the systematic destruction of an established fictional icon to turn a buck and hack off the fandom. The only two possible motives I can imagine for doing this absurd character assassination. Everything that Sherlock Holmes is supposed to be is deconstructed and stamped into the dirt. All the compassion, humanity, inviolate sense of nobility and honour completely eradicated. If nothing else, it goes to show that the unnecessary demolishing of established fictional icons as a means of destabilising popular culture and promoting extremist ideology is far from new. Do it to Sherlock Holmes, and then nothing is safe. Why, they might even do it to, say, Doctor Who one day. Oh, yeah. James Bond then? Ah, right. Flawed as it is, I still get a good country mile or so of entertainment value from A Study in Terror. It looks great despite its mainly studio-bound locations, and blends fact, fiction and conjecture together in a generally coherent, if plot-holed, iteration. The ladies of the night you're in looking probably clean, radiant, sexy and attractive. Bloody well hot too when we get to Edina Ronay. The Kensington gore and grisly murders are deployed with curated visual elegance, taste and restraint. It's a higher than mid-pack Sherlock Holmes outing and worth a look for its original storyline, an early live-action graphic novel impressionism. Thank you very much for your time and attention. Feel free to do whatever you choose to do next. Hit like, don't like, comment, subscribe, check out my early access Patreon thing, or even make a welcome financial contribution via the thanks button. I will make a return visit soon, which is pretty much par for the course as they say. Bye for now, pilgrims.